As soon as I got home, a parent in my son's class group chat sent an angry message. Miss Sarah, does your kindergarten hire just any random person as a teacher? As soon as my daughter got home, she grabbed 2 chopsticks and tried to jump off the balcony, saying Miss Chloe taught her to do it. The homeroom teacher panicked and quickly denied it, saying there was no teacher named Chloe at the kindergarten. She even posted the teacher's class roster in the group. Not a single trace of the so-called Miss Chloe appeared in the surveillance footage either. My son whispered to me secretly, Mom, Miss Chloe is an old lady with a cat's face. Miss Chloe said only kids can see her. She's standing right next to you, Mom. My palms turned cold because I was certain there was no one around me. I took a deep breath and held my son's shoulders. I asked him as earnestly as I could, Jackson, tell Mom what you meant when you said Tiffany finished her task and Miss Chloe is taking her to the moon. Jackson snapped back to his senses, his eyes flickering. Mom, I promised Miss Chloe I wouldn't tell you. I knew I couldn't force him. I knelt down, stroked his head and said, then tell me after Miss Chloe leaves. Okay. My son hesitated. I played the emotional card. Jackson, didn't you say Mom is your favorite person in the whole world? Are you keeping secrets from me? My son thought for a moment, then glanced at the corner beside me, as if making sure Miss Chloe was gone. Only then did he lean close to my ear and whisper, Mom, I can tell you, but you have to promise not to tell anyone else. After I promised, my son finally told me the truth. Miss Chloe gave each of us a task. If we finish it successfully, she'll come take us to the moon herself. There's a fancy chocolate factory on the moon. We can eat chocolate every day and go on moon adventures with Doryman. At that, he suddenly turned around and stared at the moon outside the window, with bright eyes. Mom, look, Tiffany's on Miss Chloe's spaceship. They're almost at the moon. His eyes were full of admiration, but I saw nothing. I was hesitating whether to tell Tiffany's mom what Jackson had said. When my phone rang, Miss Sarah's voice on the other end was extremely tense. Jackson's mom, Tiffany, just jumped off the building. Is your Jackson okay? I looked at my son motionless by the window, and every hair on my body stood on end. What a terrifying coincidence. Miss Sarah told me Tiffany had acted completely normal all day, and hadn't mentioned Miss Chloe once. But while Tiffany's mom was busy cooking, she suddenly grabbed the homemade bamboo copter and shouted, Miss Chloe, I'm ready for the moon adventure. Then she jumped off the 15th floor balcony. Tiffany's mom fainted on the spot, and later begged the police to catch this Miss Chloe at all costs. However, Tiffany's death finally made the kindergarten leadership take this seriously, afraid more kids would get hurt. Miss Sarah and I immediately gathered all the parents whose kids claimed to see Miss Chloe, and created a new chat group. We reorganized the clues about Miss Chloe. According to the kids, Miss Chloe had picked 5 children in the class. Completing her tasks would get them taken to the moon. Tiffany, who'd fallen to her death, had been tasked with flying off the balcony with her homemade bamboo copter. What I found even more incomprehensible was that none of the 5 kids described Miss Chloe the same way. The atmosphere in the group turned heavy. Chad's mom, my son came home today, smashed the TV and kept demanding a time machine. Tom's dad, your son is just ignorant. You should see how weird my son is acting. He drew a door on the wall with crayons and kept banging his head against it. It was an anywhere door given by Miss Chloe, and if he walked through it, he'd reach the moon. Scared me half to death. Jenny's grandma, your kids are clearly possessed. Let us come check for you. 3 families get a 20% group discount. I asked Jenny's grandma curiously. Jenny's grandma, hasn't Jenny been acting strange at all? Jenny's grandma, that child is quiet, just draws all day. What could happen to her? Attached picture, Chad's mom. You'd better watch her closely. The quieter kids are the more likely to get into trouble. Jenny's grandma. Don't curse my Jenny. If anything happens to her, this old lady will come for you. Parents couldn't reach a conclusion in the chat. Finally, Miss Sarah summarized. According to the kids, they first saw Miss Chloe at the beginning of the month. The police and I checked the classroom surveillance all day and found nothing unusual. But don't scare yourselves. We can be certain Miss Chloe is one person. Then Miss Sarah posted a photo in the group. This is a card found on Tiffany's body by the police. Preliminary investigation suggests Tiffany's death is likely related to this card. I clicked on the picture. Curiously, it was a white kindergarten card with a drawing of a building, a little girl with pigtails flying toward the moon, with a bamboo copter on her head. Next to it was a line of small text, Welcome back, Tiffany. Neither the drawing style nor the handwriting looked like a child's. So the police concluded this card, which encouraged the child to commit suicide, must have been left for Tiffany by Miss Chloe. Miss Sarah reminded the group. In short, if you find any cards like this on your kids, call the police immediately. Also, I've arranged leave for the kids until this is resolved. Please, please keep a close eye on your children and ensure their safety. If there are any updates or clues, let's communicate right away. Chad's mom. Okay. Tom's dad. No problem. Jenny's grandma. After exiting WeChat, I felt exhausted. I walked to the kitchen to check how my son was eating, only to hear him muttering to himself again. Miss Chloe, if I finish making the memory bread and give it to mom to eat, I have completed my task. Memory bread. A terrible premonition washed over me. I rushed to my son and saw him frantically sprinkling rat poison from nowhere onto a slice of bread. Who gave this to you? I grabbed his hand. We had no rat poison at home, and he hadn't gone anywhere since coming home from kindergarten. It must have been given to him by someone at school. My son was probably scared by my tone, and tears welled up in his eyes. Miss Chloe said, I can't tell. I took a deep breath and asked, Miss Chloe gave it to you, didn't she? Did she also give you a card? My son looked shocked. Mom, how did you know? I held out my hand and told him to give me the card. After hesitating for a long time, he finally pulled a small illustrated card out of his pocket. As I'd expected, the style was identical to the one found on Tiffany. But I quickly noticed something was wrong. In a flash, the truth hit me. I picked up my phone and called Miss Sarah. Miss Sarah, I know who Miss Chloe is. Miss Sarah, I know who Miss Chloe is. My voice trembled, not just from fear, but from the sheer, icy clarity that had just pierced through the panic. I stared at the card in my hand, the illustration of the little girl flying to the moon. Who? Sarah's voice cracked on the other end of the line. Jackson's mom, who is it? It's not about the drawing, I whispered, my eyes locked on my son, who was still weeping silently, clutching the poisoned bread. It's the smell and the handwriting. I brought the card closer to my nose. Beneath the faint chemical sting of the marker, there was a lingering, sickly sweet odor. It was distinct, ancient, like rotting flowers mixed with cheap incense and old paper. Sandalwood and formaldehyde, I said. And look at the character for moon on the card. The hook at the bottom turned sharply to the left. It's an archaic calligraphy style. I don't understand, Sarah cried. The group chat, I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. Scroll up to the photo Jenny's grandma posted. The one of the discount price list for her exorcisms. Look at the handwriting. There was a pause, a rustle of movement, and then a gasp that sounded like a sob. The connection was undeniable. The sharp, aggressive strokes were identical. Jenny's grandma, Sarah breathed. But she's just a superstitious old woman. Jackson said Miss Chloe has a cat's face. I continued, the pieces falling into place with terrifying precision. He didn't mean a literal animal. Last month, when I picked Jackson up, I saw Jenny's grandmother waiting by the gate. She was wearing a heavy veil, but the wind blew it aside. Her face, it was rigid. Too much Botox, lifted eyes, cheeks pulled back unnaturally tight. To a 5-year-old, she looks like a cat. Oh my God. She's not just a grandma, I said, grabbing the bag of rat poison and sealing it. Jackson said Miss Chloe is old, but only kids can see her. That's because she waits in the blind spots. She waits until the teachers are looking away. Sarah, you need to check Jenny's file. Now. What is the grandmother's name? I heard the frantic clicking of a keyboard. Jenny lives with her grandmother because her parents are overseas. Guardian name. Here. It's listed as Chloe Zhang. The air in my kitchen seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sarah, I said, call the police. Send them to Jenny's house immediately. I'm going there now. Don't, Sarah screamed. It's dangerous. If she's really convincing these kids to. Chad is demanding a time machine. I cut her off. Tom is banging his head against a wall for an anywhere door. If we wait for the police to navigate traffic, another kid is going to die. I live 2 blocks from Jenny. I'm going. I hung up. I looked at Jackson. He was curled in a ball, shivering. Jackson, I said, my voice steel. Mommy is going to find the real Doryman. You stay here. Lock the door. Open it for no one but me or the police. Do you understand? He nodded, eyes wide. Will you bring back the memory bread? I'll bring back the truth, I said, and I ran out the door. The apartment complex where Jenny lived was an old, crumbling, brutalist structure from the 90s, the kind with flickering hallway lights and peeling paint. As I ran toward Building B, my phone buzzed. It was the group chat. Chad's mom, help. I can't open the refrigerator. Chad is inside. He emptied it out and climbed in. He says it's the time machine. He's locked it from the inside. Tom's dad. My son is bleeding. He says the wall is too hard. He needs a drill to open the anywhere door. I have to tie him up. Panic was spreading like a virus. I didn't type back. I sprinted up the stairs to the 4th floor, ignoring the elevator that likely didn't work. When I reached Unit 404, the door was a heavy, rusted iron gate. The smell hit me instantly. That same cloying mix of incense and decay I'd smelled on the card. It was suffocating. I pounded on the door. Jenny, Mrs. Zhang, open up. Silence. Then a small, muffled sound. Not from inside the apartment, but from the stairwell above. A rhythmic thump, thump, thump. I looked up. Sitting on the landing of the 5th floor, staring down at me through the gap in the railings, was Jenny. She was perfectly still. Her eyes were glazed over, black pupils dilated so wide they swallowed the irises. In her hands, she held a sketchpad. Jenny, I called out, slowly climbing the stairs. Sure, Jenny whispered, putting a finger to her lips. Grandma is helping Chad with his homework. My blood ran cold. Where is Grandma, Jenny? She's in the time machine factory, Jenny said dreamily. She pointed to her apartment door. But you can't go in. You're an adult. Adults can't go to the moon. Jenny, Tiffany is hurt. Jackson is sick. We need to stop the game. It's not a game, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. The world is dirty. Grandma says the moon is pure. We have to shed our heavy skins to fly there. Shed our heavy skins. Suicide. Open the door, Jenny. I can't, she said. Only Miss Chloe has the key. I didn't wait. I ran back down to 404 and kicked the door. It didn't budge. I looked around desperately. The hallway window. It opened onto a narrow maintenance ledge that ran along the outside of the building. It was suicide to climb it, 15 floors up. But I thought of Chad suffocating in a fridge. I thought of Jackson holding rat poison. I took off my heels. I climbed out the window. The wind whipped my hair into my eyes. I pressed my back against the rough concrete, inching sideways toward the balcony of 404. Don't look down. Don't look down. I reached the balcony railing and vaulted over. The glass sliding door was unlocked. I stepped into the living room. It was a shrine. Hundreds of drawings were taped to the walls, the ceiling, the floor. All of them depicted the same scenes: children dying, a boy crushed by a clock, time machine, a girl falling from the sky, bamboo copter, a boy foaming at the mouth, memory bread. But in the center of the room, sitting on a velvet armchair like a grotesque queen, was Miss Chloe. She was wearing a full head mask. It was a plush, oversized cat head, a Doraemon mask, but modified. The smile had been stitched wider with red thread, giving it a jagged, bloody grin. The eyes were replaced with mirrors. She wasn't alone. Tied to a wooden chair in front of her was a boy I recognized from the class photos. It was Chad. He wasn't in a fridge at his home. He was here. The message in the group chat from Chad's mom, it was a distraction. Or Chad's mom was hallucinating too. Welcome, Jackson's mother, the woman said. Her voice was muffled by the mask, raspy and high-pitched. You're just in time for the launch. Let him go, I said, scanning the room for a weapon. My eyes landed on a heavy brass incense burner. He wants to go, Miss Chloe cooed. She stroked Chad's hair. The boy was unresponsive, his eyes rolled back in his head. A white froth coated his lips. He ate the memory bread. All his bad memories are gone now. He doesn't remember his parents fighting. He doesn't remember the pressure to get into private school. He only knows the moon is waiting. You're drugging them, I snarled, inching closer. Scopolamine? Datura? I am freeing them. She stood up, and the mask bobbed eerily. Do you know what my Jenny sees every day? She sees you parents. Comparing grades. Comparing clothes. Screaming at them for spilling water. You are the monsters. I am simply giving them the tools to escape. By killing them? By ascending, she shrieked. Tiffany is happy now. She is flying. She lunged at me. For an old woman, she was terrifyingly fast. She pulled a syringe from the pocket of her robe. I ducked, grabbing the brass burner. She swung the syringe, the needle grazing my shoulder. I swung the burner with all my strength. It connected with the side of the cat mask with a sickening crack. Miss Chloe staggered back, falling into the pile of drawings. The mask twisted sideways. She clawed at it, ripping it off. Beneath was the face I expected, the ruined, plastic surgery disaster of Jenny's grandmother. But her eyes, they were wild, completely unhinged. You can't stop the launch, she screamed, spitting blood. The anywhere door is already open. Suddenly, the front door burst open. Police officers swarmed in, guns drawn. Miss Sarah was behind them, pale as a ghost. Freeze. Down on the ground. Chloe Zhang froze. She looked at the police, then at me, and a calm, eerie smile spread across her bloody lips. It doesn't matter, she whispered. The seeds are already planted. She grabbed a handful of the white powder from a bowl on the table and shoved it into her mouth before the officers could tackle her. She convulsed once, violently, and then went limp. Paramedics rushed to Chad. He's alive. Weak pulse, but alive. I slumped against the wall, sliding down to the floor. It was over. Miss Sarah rushed to me, hugging me tightly. You did it. You saved him. I looked at the drawings on the wall. They fluttered in the draft from the open door. Where is Jenny? I asked suddenly. Sarah looked around. The police said the stairwell was empty. A cold dread seized my heart. I ran to the balcony. The maintenance ledge was empty. 2 weeks passed. The investigation was gruesome. Chloe Zhang had been running a cult of personality within the kindergarten for months. She had been lacing the kids' snacks, which she often brought in as treats during volunteer hours, with a homemade hallucinogenic compound derived from poisonous plants she grew on her balcony. The tasks were hypnotic suggestions planted while the children were high. Tiffany's death was ruled a homicide by induced suicide. Chloe Zhang died in the ambulance from an overdose of her own poison. The school was shut down. The parents were in collective therapy. Jackson was slowly recovering, though he still had nightmares about cats. We thought it was over. I was in the kitchen, making dinner. The TV was on in the living room. Jackson was drawing at the coffee table. Mom, Jackson said. His voice was different. Clearer. Older. Yes, sweetie. Miss Chloe was a liar. I froze, turning off the stove. I walked into the living room. Yes, she was. She was a very sick woman. No, Jackson said, not looking up from his paper. She lied about the moon. There is no chocolate factory. That's right. But she didn't lie about the anywhere door. My heart stopped. Jackson, what are you talking about? He held up his drawing. It wasn't a child's scribble. It was a perfect, architectural rendering of a door. The shading, the perspective, it was professional. It was the same style as the card found on Tiffany. Jackson, who taught you to draw like that? He pointed at the TV. I looked at the screen. It was the evening news. They were showing a photo of the missing child, Jenny. She had never been found. Jenny taught me, Jackson said. She's not gone, Mom. She just went through the door. Jackson, stop it. She left me a gift, he whispered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, white card. My vision blurred. Jackson, give me that. It's okay, Mom, he smiled. It was a chilling, adult smile. Jenny said, I don't have to go to the moon. She said I can bring the moon here. He flipped the card over. On the back, in that same, jagged, archaic handwriting, it read, Phase 2, the sun. Suddenly, the lights in the apartment flickered and died. The smell of sandalwood and formaldehyde filled the room, stronger than ever before. Jackson, I screamed, lunging for him. But in the darkness, a small, blue light appeared. It wasn't a flashlight. It was the glow of a round, robotic nose. From the corner of the room, a voice, not an old woman's, but a young girl's voice, distorted to sound like a machine, giggled. Here comes the sun. I fumbled for my phone, using the flashlight to cut through the suffocating darkness. Jackson. He was standing in the middle of the room, staring at the corner where the blue light had been. He looked trance-like again. Jackson, look at me. I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. She's here, Mom, he whispered. Doraemon's sister. Dorami. I shone the light into the corner. There was nothing there but the ventilation grate. But stuck to the grate was a small yellow post-it note. I ripped it off. Meet me at the playground. Or the gas line goes boom. My blood turned to ice. The sun. An explosion. Jackson, we have to go. Now. I grabbed him, not bothering with shoes, and ran out of the apartment. I pulled the fire alarm in the hallway. The shrill ringing pierced the air, waking the neighbors. I needed everyone out. As we stumbled out onto the street, sirens were already wailing. But I wasn't waiting for the police. I knew where Jenny was. The kindergarten playground. It was 3 blocks away. I dragged Jackson, who was stumbling, half asleep or half drugged. Mom, I'm tired, he whined. Stay with me, Jackson. We reached the school gates. They were locked with a heavy chain, but the side entrance, the one the cooks used, was ajar. I pushed through. The playground was bathed in the eerie orange glow of the streetlights. And there, sitting on top of the slide, was a small figure. It was Jenny. She wasn't wearing a mask. She was wearing a yellow windbreaker, the hood pulled up to mimic ears. She was swinging her legs back and forth, holding a remote control in her hand. Jenny, I screamed. She looked down. Her face was pale, her expression bored. You're late, Jackson's mom, she said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Grandma was so slow. She talked too much. That's why she had to be retired. The truth hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't your grandmother, I gasped. It was you. You were the one drawing the cards. You were the one making the poison. Jenny giggled. It was the sound of pure malice. Grandma was just the delivery service. She believed anything I told her. I told her I was the reincarnation of a moon goddess. Old people are so easy to trick. Easier than kids. Why? I sobbed. Why Tiffany? Why my son? Because I was bored, Jenny said, tilting her head. And because you adults are so loud. Always talking about potential and future. I wanted to see if I could make the future disappear. She held up the remote. This connects to the gas main in the school kitchen. And the one in your building. I rigged them months ago. Grandma thought we were fixing the pipes. Jenny, put the remote down. I will, she said. If Jackson finishes his task. She pointed at Jackson. Jackson, come here. Climb the slide. Jackson took a step forward. No. I held him back. If you don't let him, I press the button, Jenny said.
Boom.
Your apartment. Mrs. Lee's apartment. Everyone dies. I froze. The leverage was absolute. Jackson, Jenny commanded. Come to Darami. Jackson pulled away from my hand. He walked toward the slide. He climbed the ladder, step by step. I watched, helpless, my mind racing. She was a child. A psychopath, but a child. When Jackson reached the top, Jenny handed him the remote.
Here, she said.
You do it. Be the hero. Press the red button. It opens the sun. Jackson looked at the remote. He looked at Jenny. Then he looked down at me. Mom, he asked. Jackson, don't. I begged, stepping closer to the slide. That's not a toy. But Miss, Darami said. Jackson, I said, voice steadying. Remember the memory bread? Remember how your tummy hurt? She hurt you. She hurt Tiffany. Jackson's eyes flickered. The fog of the drug seemed to be thinning, warring with the trauma. She's not a cartoon, I said. She's just a bully. Jenny hissed. Press it. Jackson looked at Jenny. My mom says. He paused. My mom says bullies go to timeout. And then, Jackson did something I didn't expect. He didn't press the button. He threw the remote. He threw it as hard as he could, over the fence, into the tall grass of the overgrown lot next door. Jenny screamed. It was a primal, animalistic shriek. She lunged at Jackson, shoving him. Jackson. I scrambled up the slide. Jackson tumbled down the plastic chute, landing in the sand pit with a thud. He was crying, but he was moving. Jenny stood at the top, trembling with rage. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a lighter. Fine, she screamed. I don't need the remote. The kitchen is right there. She slid down the slide and bolted toward the cafeteria building. The smell of gas was already faint in the air. She had left a valve open. Jenny, no. I sprinted after her. I was faster. I was a mother terrified for her child, and she was just a 7-year-old girl. I tackled her just as she reached the door. We hit the pavement hard. The lighter skittered across the concrete. She fought like a demon, scratching, biting, screaming in tongues. The moon. The sun. Let me go. I pinned her down, my weight holding her small, thrashing frame. It's over, Jenny, I yelled. Sirens flooded the parking lot. Blue and red lights washed over us. Let me go, she wailed, and for the first time, she sounded like a child. A broken, terrified child. Grandma said she'd take me with her. She promised. I looked down at her wild eyes and realized the final, tragic layer. The grandmother had been the cult leader initially. She had warped this child's mind so thoroughly that when the grandmother died, the child simply took up the mantle, unable to distinguish reality from the nightmare she'd been raised in. The police pulled me off her. They handcuffed the 7-year-old girl. It was a sight that would haunt me forever. 6 months later, we moved. We had to. The city held too many ghosts. Jackson is doing better. He sees a therapist twice a week. We don't watch Doraemon anymore. We watch documentaries about nature. Real things. Tangible things. Jenny was placed in a high-security psychiatric facility for juveniles. The experts say she has a condition they've never seen before, a complete dissociation from humanity, fueled by early childhood indoctrination. I try not to think about her. But yesterday a letter arrived. It had no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. It was a drawing. A crude, crayon drawing, much less skillful than the ones from before. It showed a boy and a mom, holding hands, standing on green grass under a yellow sun. It looked normal. Except for one detail. In the corner of the sun, there was a small, jagged shape.
A door.
And on the back of the paper, written in messy, childish scrawl, Jackson's old handwriting, were the words. I promised I wouldn't tell. But the door is always open. I stared at the paper. I looked at Jackson, playing in the yard of our new house. He was laughing, chasing a butterfly.
He stopped.
He looked at the butterfly, then looked directly at me through the window. He winked. And for a split second, his shadow on the grass didn't look like a little boy. It looked like a cat. I locked the window. But I knew, deep down, that you can never truly lock the door once it's been opened.